This is a reminder that I do not stitch problematic material directly. The last thing I need is to constantly see these people faces on my FYP any more than I already do. So a lot of us have already seen edgy witch talk boy for the left-hand path talk about his opinion on closed practices. And I feel like we can all be assured he doesn't actually have a legitimate opinion, even if the current things that he said he believes in any real way. What he did was a textbook attempt at psychic vampiric feeding. I know a lot of the people I've seen already know how to defend themselves against such things, and it's not innately difficult to do. But it is an example to keep that in mind even when interacting with people on social media. Especially people who may or may not have narcissistic tendencies. Be vigilant and protect. This is going to be a generic, non-instructional learning video, so it's going to be about 3 minutes. Psychic vampires are also called energy vampires and emotional vampires. They are also, a lot of the times, smexual vampires, but I don't think that's a necessary specification. And they take a lot of notes seemingly from non-theistic draconic path workers in the sense that they are working a lot with the archetype of the mythical vampire and becoming more like them. The majority of the communities that I'm familiar with will spell vampire with a Y instead of an I as to make the intentionally found community easier to find. But effectively, it is a community of people who take energy work into a direction of using other people's energies to, I don't want to say sustain yourself, because it's not like you don't have to eat or drink, but it's basically you take their energy and you make it your energy. Some people can do this intuitively, though literally everyone can be taught how to do it. And while there's different variations to doing this, especially if it's within different types of paganism, and therefore the various different types of souls that are within those various paganisms. Again, using soul as a broad term. But at least the generic theory is it works best with high-intensity emotions, especially ones that might actually put chemicals like testosterone or other things in your brain. And best if it's directed specifically at you. Some practitioners of this are fine with basically just going to like nightclubs or bars and basically siphoning it off that way. Other people are more specific in their wants, sometimes predatory, not always, and will coax situations where that energy is coming to them directly. This would include making a video specifically about a situation that everyone else has already decided on and has already gone into their little groups about, but still have very high emotions over. Presenting it in such a way that through mundane and magical means coax that emotion and expressing it towards them out of intended victims. And in this case, I would definitely say victims. And as I said, not everyone who practices this is innately predatory. Unfortunately, it is a way that predators do things, and unfortunately, people who are predators who know how to do this tend to be particularly dangerous. Especially if people don't realize that the practitioner is responsible for both the highs and the lows of their energetic feelings. It's been a while, but if you have any more questions, I'll try. Valid questions. Now, I imagine you have a variety of wards in place, so like protection is one of the main things, especially, in that sense. But I generally wouldn't say that it's a problem unless two things, or one of two things happen. It's energy work, so there's a good chance that he may or may not have your energetic signature. I personally am doubtful, but that is a possibility. And it wouldn't innately be a problem unless you are feeling specifically energetically drained, as in he somehow used like the energy signature to keep siphoning it off from specifically you. Or you get specifically addicted to the emotional high of it, despite a possible emotional energetic crash. And I freely admit a lot of this comes down to UPG. But no matter what, these are energetic cords that can be cut. From what I saw of your video, you gave him a very limited energetic source.
Seems like everybody and their dang grandma is talking about vampirism and is concerned and all that stuff and everything. I'm going to throw nuance out there. I understand that it's risky on here, but someone has to speak nuance. Bring a concept of balance to this, okay? So let's talk about it. Y'all need to understand that not every practitioner of vampirism is corrupt or bad, okay? I know a couple of psychic vampires out there who use this gift that they align to for healing purposes, to help other people, okay? To help others. That does not make them a corrupt or bad person because they practice vampirism, all right? There are ethical practitioners out there. Remember, light in the darkness, darkness in the light. Balance, y'all. Balance. The main ones that you need to worry about are your unethical practitioners who just do it for the sake of doing it because they think they can. All right? Main ones you want to avoid are what I call rage feeders. They literally have to provoke you to anger or to a heightened state of emotion just to be able to get in and take something from you now. Don't feed the trolls. Don't allow yourself to be provoked to anger. Maintain your grace and your dignity. Disengage and keep it moving, okay? Keep it moving. Now, keeping up with your everyday protections, prayers, anointings, whatever you do for protection, will usually keep these kind of unethical practitioners of vampirism at bay. But if you happen to find yourself falling prey to these unethical practitioners, do keep in mind that energy at the end of the day is a two-way street. All right? As much as they try to take from you, you can recall your stuff back. You can take your stuff back. Okay? And if you decide to go the extra mile, you can end up pulling from them. Now, I don't recommend y'all doing that unless you know how to cleanse energy and transform it and all that stuff, because you can end up messing yourself up if you don't know what you're doing, okay? All in all, y'all need to understand that the practice of vampirism, anyone honestly can do. It's just a matter of, do you align with it or not? I sure as hell don't align with it, because if I try, my ancestors would have my ass. Trust me. That would be a disaster in a heartbeat. So y'all, please don't be so worried about this whole concept or thing or anything like that, alright? And do keep in mind, a person can only have so much sway over your energy as much as you allow them to. And another point, sometimes you're not under a psychic vampire attack. You are draining your own energy, okay?
This is another video on psychic vampirism where I'm responding to a lot of comments or just adding some things. Attached to this video should be a video by Afro Spiritual, who added a lot of nuance on his own, including the fact that psychic vampirism can be used for healing. And this can be done by basically taking the negatively impactful emotional energy, alchemizing it into something different, and either using that yourself or giving that back to the person. As I said, not every psychic vampire is innately predatory. A video on how to cut their ties from your energy would be helpful. It would. I will do my best to get a video on that in the next couple days, since I have a couple days off. Or you can send spiders down those cords. Very true. Or even as Afro Spiritual said, you can start siphoning off of, the vampire itself. While I should not assume the magical experience of anyone who views my videos, I would say both those are at the very least intermediate to, practices magic regularly. And again, as Afro Spiritual said, you really do need to learn how to basically alchemize the energy into something different, if that's the route you're going to go. But those are indeed both options. I had one at a Reiki working that said, no thanks, I'm full, and it was predatory. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a community that it tracks a lot of predatory behavior, and unfortunately is not always dealt with appropriately. I've had experience with a vampire before, a LARPer who actually tried to drain energy when I called him out. Yeah, a lot of people are also within this community far more for the aesthetic of it than the practice or think they're way more powerful than they are, or is, I would say, possible. Is there any way I can be a taco vampire? Unfortunately, the only food vampires that I'm overly aware of are ketchup vampires, and their secrets have eluded me. There's also another joking response to this that I have, but I don't think this is an app where that would fly. I think that was all the comments that I had that I really could respond to. Thank you for watching, and as I said, check out the Afro-Spiritual video. All this talk about psychic vampires that even I've been doing is brought back a lot of memories. So imagine it's the late 90s, early 2000s, and this is one of the times where like vampire movies and stuff like that was at its height in like pop culture minds. So of course this affects the occult side of things. Now the idea of the psychic vampire has existed well before this, however this is the most profitable time to actually bring it to the public. So people start making occultic groups and religions based off of this concept, including the Temple of the Vampire, which still exists, which brings a lot of LaVeyan concepts into the occultic views of psychic vampirism, and there being a whole thing about it. They create this mythological backstory that goes all the way back to the Temple of Tiamat in Samaria and earlier. However, they're a little selective in their membership. Around 2007, another organization pops up, known as Aset Ka, bringing another mythological origin to the Kemetic order of Aset Ka, as in, they come from Egypt, however they called their religion Ascetism. Aset being the wife of Osiris. These were the two most prominent groups for a while, however, as always happens in occult groups, there were disagreements between members, certain things broke off, and there became a lot more groups. One such group was the Temple of the Black Dragon, which I can no longer seem to find any reference to them, so that's interesting. However, a lot of their stuff, including basically their code, was just this, except you would change the word force with ether. There was also known role player and vampire enthusiast Aaron Todd Hoyt, who went under the name Father Sebastian. Despite his rather cringy nature, he did have a decent amount of charisma and occultic knowledge. Supposedly given a copy of the Vampire Bible, as well as taking many things from Aset Ka, he founded the Ordo Strigoi V. The Temple of the Vampire did not publicly seem to care, though Aset Ka seemed to take some begrudgment to his actions, especially because he often made a fool of himself. Now, all of these groups attracted their own people more interested in roleplay than actual occultic knowledge. However, the Ordo became particularly famous for this. And the feud between the two organizations supposedly goes on till this day. And even though there are psychic vampires in many religions, including many pagan ones, Kemetic imagery is still pretty dominant.